Hey there, this is Ron Coddington, the editor and publisher of Military Images magazine, bringing to you Military Images Live. This is season 2, episode 20. Thank you so much for being here tonight. Military Images magazine was founded 40 years ago in 1979, and we've been bringing you Civil War portrait photography for the last 4 decades. And we're here tonight to bring you a new episode. In fact, we're wrapping up the magazine. The winter 2020 issue is going to be going to the press very shortly. So we've been going gangbusters over the last week or so, crunching on deadline. Still, news happens and lots of developments in the Civil War world to talk with you about tonight. I see a lot of folks are coming on. Doug York, Ken Faust, Liz Topping, Michael Pissarro, Rick Wolf, all of my friends showing up tonight. Thank you so much for being here. And I want to start out by marking this Veterans Day with a special word from tonight's sponsor, the Excelsior Brigade. If you know Jim Quinlan, his wife Candace Quinlan, and Sheila Vaughn, you know of the quality images that they bring to the marketplace. Most of the images that they sell are identified. In fact, they specialize in identified images. What you may not know about Jim Quinlan is that he is also involved in a project to document all of the Civil War graves at Arlington National Cemetery in Arlington, Virginia. He's been at this project for some time now, and he's going grave by grave with his wife, Candace, whom I mentioned earlier, and which Sheila Vaughn also mentioned earlier, to make sure that the graves are all properly marked, and then finding out information about the men, making sure all the information is correct. As part of an effort to help Jim, Candace, and Sheila with their project, in the spring of 2017, we began Hallowed Ground, which are profiles of veterans who were buried at Arlington National Cemetery. That was in the spring of 2017 when we started the project. And I thought that it would be nice to recognize some of those veterans that have appeared in the column over that time. So I want to run through these veterans with you and give you some basics about them as we remember Veterans Day 2019. The gentleman pictured here is the first person we profiled. This is Lieutenant Green Clay Goodloe of the 4th Kentucky Cavalry. He left the Kentucky Cavalry to go to West Point, and he later served in the U.S. Marines. He's buried at Arlington National Cemetery. Next up is Henry Meigs Meade of the U.S. Navy. He served during the entire Civil War, and you may not recognize his name, but you will know the name of his very famous uncle, Major General George Gordon Meade of the Army of the Potomac, and of course, the Battle of Gettysburg. Next is an Army nurse. This is Rose Adele Cutts. You may know her better by her maiden name, Douglas. She was married to Senator Stephen A. Douglas, and after he died, tragically, in I believe it was 1861, her mansion home in Washington became a hospital for soldiers, and she would go visit her own home and nurse the soldiers that were sick and injured. I should also mention, she's the niece of a famous Confederate spy, Rose O'Neal Greenhow. Next on our list of profiles is Sanford D. Bradbury, 27th New York Cavalry. We remember him tonight. He went on to serve in the 1st New York Cavalry, the 6th U.S. Colored Cavalry, and after the Civil War remained in the Army with the 8th U.S. Cavalry. Here is Carlos Alvarez de la Mesa. He is one of the small number of veterans in the Union Army who hailed from Spain. He served in the 39th New York Infantry, also known as the Garibaldi Guard. He was wounded at the Battle of Gettysburg. Next up is Adam Kramer. Prior to the Civil War, he served in the 2nd U.S. Dragoons. During the war, he served in the 15th Pennsylvania Cavalry, and after the war, the 6th U.S. Cavalry. Here's George W. Tucker of the 3rd Vermont Infantry. He was wounded in the Wilderness, went on to serve in the Veteran Reserve Corps, and after the war became a hospital steward in the 12th U.S. Infantry. This is a Georgiana Willits. She was an Army nurse. She was also a freedman teacher. After the war, she married James M. Stradling, who was also a fellow freedman teacher who had served in the 1st New Jersey Cavalry. Pictured here is James Downey, the 2nd Ohio Cavalry. Downey survived the entire war up until the Battle of Five Forks in April 1865, when he was mortally wounded. Our last veteran we're remembering tonight is John William Fenton, who served in the 132nd New York Infantry. So all these men and women have appeared on the pages of Military Images over the last 2.5 years, and we remember them tonight for Veterans Day. Now, we think about the photographs of these men and women who have survived. What about the folks on the other side of the lens, the photographers who took those pictures? Who are they? Where are they? What are their stories? Well, I'm pleased to tell you that Military Images has taken a special interest in also preserving some of the stories of those photographers, many of whom are completely unknown and long forgotten. In the last issue, we brought you the story of Stephen W. Galt, the Confederate photographer out of Tennessee, who settled in Bermuda about the beginning of the Civil War and made a record of Confederate navies, men, and other folks who were coming through Bermuda at that time, including this photograph here. Another profile. Oh, and I should mention, Fred Taylor wrote the bio of Stephen W. Galt. We also have this gentleman, David Heckendorn, who was a contract photographer with the Army of the Potomac. On the way to Virginia, he was captured by the Confederate Army. Not even sure how many photographs he took in the field of war. He took some pictures as an amateur at home in Pennsylvania. His bio comes to us from Sidney Drees. Two more photographers that I want to tell you about that you're going to find out about in the winter issue of the magazine is the photographer who is behind this very unique backdrop. You'll see this very graceful looking tree with the big poofy leaf canopy behind it. It's a very interesting and unique backdrop. Kyle Stetz has done some, I'm going to call it groundbreaking research. He spent a lot of time tracking down the images, and he knows who this photographer is. You're going to find out about that in the next issue of MI. Also, in the next issue of MI, you're going to meet this gentleman here who left home in Indiana and went down to Memphis and then Vicksburg, worked for a prominent photographer, and made a unique print of a picture that you're going to find out of somebody famous, again, in the next issue. So pleased to tell you that not only are we doing photographs, stories of the men who are pictured, but also the photographers behind those photographs. Now, well, hang on a second, technical glitch. We're back. Another one of the stories in the next issue is about a photographer from Florida who went to Great Britain. We wrote about him in last year. His name is McIntyre. He did a bunch of images of Confederate generals and politicians that were distributed throughout London and throughout England. It's the way that Londoners and the British public got to see the faces of the Confederate generals and politicians. Those images then made their way to Paris, France, where they were published again by a French photographer working with McIntyre. So here's one of those images. This is Beauregard. And what I noticed is quite different about the cardboard mounts on these CDVs are just, you can just see a little hint of it down here. On the corners of the photograph are little lines, little corners actually, and then there's also a line visible across the bottom. If we take a close-up of that corner, what we see is that it appears that these CDV cardboard mounts were printed with little guides for the photographer or whoever the assistant was to be able to cut out the print and mount it to the cardboard. And these little ink lines served as guides so that they knew where to place the CDV print and also where to trim it. So you can see that this person, whoever the assistant was that mounted this photograph, they basically got it on the center, but they got it just a little bit high. And as a result, you can see the bottom of the printed corner. And when they trimmed the CDV on the bottom, they left a little bit of that right there. In all of my years of collecting, I've never noticed this before. I went through some of the other CDVs from this French photographer and found the same telltale signs. So if you find other CDVs that have those same marks, let me know. I'm interested. All right. Next up. This is posted by Gary Milligan on Military Images Facebook page and elsewhere. Gary has a story to tell. He was with his friend at Vicksburg sending some pictures, a monument of the 32nd Ohio Infantry, which is a unit that his friend's ancestor belongs to. And his ancestor's name, or his friend's name, by the way, is Paul Renzetti. And the Civil War veteran that is related to Paul is a gentleman named Nathaniel Haycock. So they got to looking around, and Gary found this photograph that's featured on the website WorthPoint. It was sold at auction in, I believe, 2008. And one of the names on this photograph, and I'll show it to you larger, is Nathaniel Haycock. So the challenge is we're trying to find this photograph. We'd like to locate the image. I don't know if Paul is interested in having it because it's part of his family heritage, or if he's interested in a copy of it. But Gary Milligan is trying to help trace this particular image. One of the men, we believe, is Nathaniel Haycock, and it is identified. I believe there's also a lock of hair that was found with the photograph. So if you know anything about the whereabouts of this image, please let us know. Leave a comment on this Facebook page. One last item for the evening is, let me see here. This is this is actually sort of a storage question, and it comes from Dylan Berwick. He left this question. He says, what do you guys do with all of your CDVs? Do you have them in some sort of binder to protect them, frame them, display them? Curious what you all do with your collections. Now, several people on Facebook answered, and I'll tell you what I do with them in the hopes that it might help you. I'm very big on not exposing the cartes de visite to any light source at all. I think that the images are fragile, and I also believe that I'm a caretaker, And while these images are in my possession on my watch, I don't want to cause any damage to them. So I do not expose them to light, especially sunlight. What I will do is, after I add one to my collection, is I do a high resolution scan on a flatbed scanner, and that's a 1200 DPI TIFF file, which I store I have a portable drive that I store all the scans. And the 1200 DPI, that 1200 number, is an archival, according to the Library of Congress, that's an archival level scan. So 1200 DPI and TIFF file is important too, because the TIFF file retains all the information. If you save it as a JPEG, that's actually a compression program, and little tiny, I call them millibits, millibytes of data can be lost during the process of compression. So you want to have a TIFF file, because a TIFF file is original, it's uncompressed, and of course, as a result, those file sizes can be rather massive. Hence, you'll need some good storage space to be able to keep those files safe and secure. Now, once I have that scan made, I then take steps to preserve them. And what I do is I use these CDV sleeves. The ones that I currently like are here, and they look relatively unexciting. These are from Gaylord Archival. I'll hold it up for you. It's Gaylord Archival. It's the CDV S24 sleeve, and they're made of a high-grade archival plastic, and they're quite thick. And I've got one here that I've put the sleeve on. Hold it the right way. It's got a nice little edge that pops open. I'm not sure if you can see this. There's an edge that pops open. You can slide them in and fold it over like an envelope. And it has a nice heft to it. It has a nice weight. And it doesn't have, although it looks like it has a lot of glare, when I hold it in front of the camera here, it generally has a little bit of a matte-like finish that doesn't obscure the image in any way. So it also has a transparent back, so you can see the back mark and other relevant information. Now, when I have one of these in its mount, I like to put them into this plastic sleeve. This is made by Light Impressions, and it's an archival plastic sleeve, and it has 4 pouches. So I can put one image in each pouch, and these are top loading pouches. So I can just slide it in, tuck it down, and voila, I've now got the image in one of the 4 pouches. Once I have all the 4 images in a pouch, I will then put it into an archival album. And there's really 2 places that I use for albums. One is Light Impressions, and they've been around for a long time, but sometimes they have some supply issues, and your order will be delayed for some period of time. The other place that I use is called Archival Methods. And here's an example of one of those albums. Whoa! I'll hold it back for you. The cool thing about these is they have a slip cover. How well I can show you this. There's a slip cover that is a nice heavy grade cardboard. It has all archival paper lined inside of it. This thing is sturdy. It's a nice sturdy slip cover. If you're worried about light getting into the album, it's not going to happen. So it's really, really high grade stuff, and it's got a heavy cover on top. You can get them in different colors. There was a certain time in life when I tried to have them all buckram, and eventually the orders ran out. So now I have buckram, I have green, I have black, I have a variety. So hard to keep them all consistent, but these are really, really solid. This slipcase top fits over the album, and here's the album, and you can see that it has a 3-ring binder inside. I'll show you that there, and it has this little end clip that can open up to be able to release the clips on top. So when I open the album, like so, you can see the 3-ring binder right in there. And I'll hold this up so you can see all the photos like that. There are the photos in groups of 4. And so here is part of my collection. So I recommend, this is the method that I use to keep the CDV safe and secure. It is a little bit of an investment. I want to say the album, the slip covers and the albums run somewhere about $65, I think. I haven't priced them in a while, and I did not do my homework tonight. But you can look them up at Archival Methods or Light Impressions, and then you can also buy the 4 the plastic sleeves that hold 4 images, and then from Gaylord Archival you can get these individual CDV sleeves. So you really have 3 layers of protection: the sleeves, the 4 pouch envelopes, and then the slip cover and case itself. So that's my tip for tonight. And with that, we're going to end tonight's program. I want to thank you all so much for watching. If you don't subscribe to Military Images, as I mentioned, our winter issue is going out in a couple weeks. I would love to have you on the mailing list. I'd love to have you be a subscriber. Go to militaryimagesmagazine.com for subscription information. I'll also post it on this Facebook page. Thanks a lot. Have a great night. We'll see you next time. Bye.